Hello everyone, welcome to Sentence Diagramming 101. This video is about Chapter 9, Conclusions, so we are going to talk about the end, but before we do that, I want to back up a brief moment and talk about this magic. So before, you'll notice a few pages before the start of Part 3, there is a sentence, and we call it a crash course in sentence diagramming, and it is a ridiculous sentence about the movie Crank 2. If you liked it, I'm sorry. But it uses all of the constructions. Every grammatical construction that we have covered is in this monstrous sentence. So you can look at it and be like, okay, I've got an expletive, I have an independent clause, I have a Steve Doe, I have another independent clause, I have a Slivisk, I have another Steve Doe, I've got an adjective clause happening, I have a compound, I've got another independent clause, I have a conjunctive adverb, I have some appositives, I have another adjective. I have a stivio doe. On the other side, I have a Steve doc. I've got another stivio doe. I've got adverbial objectives, intransitive verbs. I've got participles. I have, compound participles happening here. So all of the constructions that we have covered in this book are covered in this one sentence, and it's all about Jason Statham. Now, how does it look if you want to label? It looks like this, and I had to kind of pull it apart into its relative chunks in order to make it all fit on one page. So you know how to do all this. It may seem like a lot. You're like, oh my God, look at this sentence. Yes, but also you've done all of these things. Now it's just time to put it all together at once. And when you do, you need to, well, okay, here's the bigger version of that. Just kidding. On the book, it's laid out sideways so that you can flip it open and see. So these are sideways pages, you'll notice. But, you've got your expletive, your gerund, you've got a compound sentence, compound subject complement, conjunctive adverb, you have a positive, you've got some prepositional phrases, you have an indirect object, you've got prepositional phrases like crazy that have adjective phrase clauses modifying them, you've got compound participles, infinitives, noun clauses as objects of or as indirect objects, adverbial objectives over here. You've got a compound again. These are dotted lines in case it's not showing up on my screen again. In the book, they're dotted. But these are all the things that you've learned how to do. So well done, you, making it all the way through all the constructions in English. Now, let's go back to Part 3, because this is the fun part. We're going to play with language now. We did a little bit in the poetic structure section of Chapter 8, but now we're going to do real weirdness, because sometimes we just make up words. We like to just make up sounds. Shakespeare did it a lot. In fact, his sounds got accepted, so we just use his words. But for all that we complain about English and we're like, oh, it doesn't make any sense and the rules are awkward, one of the benefits of that is that you can make a noise, and if enough people make that noise, all of a sudden it's a word and people know what it means. Now, someone did this a while ago. This is Lewis Carroll. You may be familiar with him because he wrote Alice in Wonderland, but he also wrote a poem called The Jabberwocky about one of the monsters in Alice in Wonderland, in case you're wondering. But what he did is he made up words. They're sort of like English, but they're not English. And if you Google these, you'll find them because they are part of a poem, but they are not real words. Now you can argue about what real words mean. But when he made these noises, they didn't mean anything. They were nonsense noises. So you've got "'twas brillig, and the slithy toves did gyre and gimble in the wave. All mimsy were the borogoves, and the mome raths outgrave." If you've seen the Disney version of Alice in Wonderland, you'll recognize this as the song that the Cheshire Cat is singing in the background. But it looks like English, but it's not. So "'twas brillig," we're like, oh, "'twas," that's like the night before Christmas, right? "'Twas the night before Christmas." So we know that this is "it was," but then you have brillig. Like, what is brillig? I don't know. It sounds kind of like brilliant. So maybe shiny, nice, bright. I don't know. Something along those lines. It's giving me positive vibes. I'll take it. And the slithy toves. So we know "and," that's common. We know the slithy. I don't know. I'm thinking slimy. I'm thinking slimy toads here. That's what my brain did. A slithy tove is apparently, in my mind, a slimy toad. And toads aren't slimy, so That's not fair. But those creatures, whatever they are, toves, they're gyring and they're gimbaling. So this is a verb. Gyre makes me think of gyroscope, so like spinning. Gimbaling, I don't know. They're moving in some way that involves perhaps spinning and wiggling. I don't know. And then they are in the wave. So wherever they are is a place called wave. So that's where the gyring and the gimbaling is occurring. And then all mimsy were the borogroves. Ooh, this is like poetry, right? We just did this. So what you do is you flip it. You're like, all blank were the blanks. I'm like, oh, this is sort of all happy were the kittens, all smiling were the children, all delicious were the sandwiches. So the borogoves is the subject. And they are mimsy, whatever mimsy means. I don't know, whimsy, whimsical, happy, cheerful. Those borogoves are just mimsy. And yeah, I contrast these mimsy borogoves with the slithy toves. I feel like these guys are more serious, and then the borogoves are just having a good time. They aren't gyring and gimbaling, though, like the toves. The toves are gyring and gimbaling. They just are. They're just hanging out, watching the toves do their thing. But final sentence, and the mome rath's outgrave. I don't know what a mome rath is, but apparently it is outgraving today. So some kind of action. Got to be my verb. So how do I diagram this? I'm like, well, it was subject, linking verb, brillig, subject complement, and the slithy toves did what? They gyred and they gimbaled, and then they gimbaled in the wave. So you're like, 'twas brillig, and the toves did gyre and gimble, and then all mimsy were the borogoves. The borogoves were mimsy, and then the mome raths are apparently outgraving. Cool. Here's the whole poem if you're curious, and you don't have to look for it. I don't know why it got smushed on my page. It's not smushed in your book. But 'twas brillig. Oh, this also has Jabberwocky. This is an early version of the book, in case you're wondering, making these videos. So this is probably fixed in your version. 'Twas brillig, and the slithy toves did gyre and gimble in the wave, all mimsy with the borogoves and the mome raths outgrave. Beware the Jabberwock, my son, the jaws that bite, the claws that catch. Beware the Jub bird, and shun the frumious Bandersnatch. So apparently someone's talking, telling me to watch out for these things. He took his vorpal sword in hand, long time the manxome foe he sought. So rested he by the tum-tum tree and stood a while in thought. So someone is fighting, and if you've played a video game, you probably are familiar with a vorpal sword. That's where it comes from. It's from this poem by Lewis Carroll. And he's hanging out by a tree. I don't know what a tum-tum tree is, but I always read this and I think of the Lorax. I don't know if you're familiar with the Dr. Seuss, but the Lorax and those fluffy trees. I don't know why, but tum-tum tree makes me think of those fluffy trees from the Lorax. And as an oofish thought he stood, the Jabberwock with eyes of flame came whiffling through the tulgey wood and burbled as it came. I don't know that whiffling and burbling is a scary thing for a monster, but eyes of flame seems pretty bad. 1, 2, and through, the vorpal blade went snicker-snack, he left it dead, and with its head he went galumphing back. I guess it went well, because he cut its head off. And hast thou slain the Jabberwock? Come to my arms, my beamish boy. O Frabjous day, Callooh, Callay, he chortled in his joy. Everybody's happy, Frabjous day. There's no reason why we say fabulous day or hooray instead of frabjous. We could just as easily, as English speakers, we could make the noise Callooh instead of hooray, and it wouldn't make any difference. Hooray was just the one that took off, and people were like, oh, we say hooray when we're happy? Cool, hooray. But, I don't know, Lewis Carroll was like, Callay. And everybody went, yeah, Callay. And then we're back to the beginning, right? 'Twas brillig, and the slithy toves did gyre and gimble in the wave, all mimsy with the borogoves and the mome raths outgrave. So the world returned to normal after he kills the monster. And that's the Jabberwocky by Lewis Carroll. So you can have fun with made-up words.